Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's going to be speaking once again about George Balašević. You may hear me pronouncing that correctly. I've been pronouncing that name Balašević, but it's Balašević. And the hundreds of commenters on my last 3 videos about Balašević have let me know. The other person who let me know is my wife, who is from the former Yugoslavia, who is actually in the room as I am filming. She will be there to correct my pronunciation from time to time. Now this is the thing, I make these videos, I make a video once a year for her birthday, about her favorite singer, George Balašević. And I wasn't going to make another one, you know? I mean, I make one a year and I'll just keep making them as long as we're married, which will hopefully be forever. But he passed recently. He passed about 3 weeks ago. And in this house, we've been listening to so much Balašević, and we've been thinking so much about his music, and I made, a video in honor of his death and his passing. That's become my most successful video. I've been extremely touched by the reactions that I've gotten from people. It seems as though a lot of people in America and in former Yugoslavia really like these videos, and they really help them almost grieve or help them through this process. So first of all, thank you to everybody who watched those videos and who commented them. Hvala mucho, as I tell my wife whenever she makes me nice food. She made a paprikash for lunch. It was quite nice. Did I pronounce that right? Mm-hmm. All right. But what I want to do is kind of keep working on this. So this is what I decided to do. Whenever I do a video about Balašević, so I started off with his first album, Pub, and then I moved on to his second album, Celovečernji the Kid. Did I say that right?
Celovečernji the Kid.
Celovečernji the Kid. And every time I posted these, there would be people in the comments who would say, okay, this is great, but this is not the beginning of Balašević. You're missing out on Rani Mraz. You're missing out on his early work. And so, why not? Okay, I'll keep on going. I'll release my review of 3 in December for her birthday like I was going to. But until then, I'm going to make extra videos about Balašević, the early days, the days that preceded his solo career, because it turns out his music was just as good in the 70s as it would be in the 80s. So this was my plan, and this is kind of funny. My plan was I also wanted my wife to participate. So normally I do these videos as a surprise for her, but I thought instead of doing that, I wanted to help her think about Balašević in a different way, not just mourn, but help to create something with me, help me with translations, with meanings of songs. As you will see, she taught me a lot about what certain words mean in Serbian, Serbo-Croatian, and so I wanted to include her in this as well. And so at first, she was like, I know what we're going to review, Sky. We are going to review the second Rani Mraz album. And I said, great. I downloaded it on YouTube, and I got ready to listen to it. And as a surprise, I went on eBay, and I ordered the album. I paid $40 American, which is quite a lot of money, but I was going to have it sent here and do it. And I was all excited, and it's going to be a big surprise. And after a day, she goes, you know what?
Wait, you ordered the album?
I think we should do the first album. So I go, you know what? Okay, great, we'll do that. So then I go on eBay and I order the first album, another $40. She doesn't know about this.
I'm just learning about this.
She's just learning about this right now. And then after I start listening to that and getting used to that, and I have a whole story arc for that album, all about how Balašević came to terms with his parents and adulthood and how he needed that to become a great artist. She goes, you know what? He was actually a singles artist, so we need to review the singles. I didn't buy the singles. They aren't coming. That's not a surprise. I will eventually get the Rani Mraz album soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the beginning, before even their first. Happy anniversary. It's almost our anniversary, so that's what they'll be. So he wasn't necessarily destined to be a singer-songwriter who would make albums. Apparently, when he started off, he wanted to be a songwriter, write songs for other people. And he would sort of sneak in and play a little bit here and there, and he'd play festivals, and his early career is kind of hazy. It's not at all the idea of somebody who knew exactly what he wanted to do and was destined for greatness and followed that star to where he was going. It seems almost accidental. So I want to start with the singles. Before the first album, before the first Rani Mraz album, which is 2 albums before his first solo album, there are at least 18 songs that are not on any albums. I'm not going to cover all 18. You're going to look at the runtime and say, this is a super long video. Do you know how rich Balašević's music is? That's why. I'm going to be dividing them into 3 different sections. So this is the first video. The first section will be his early singles up until his first album. The second video will be about his later singles from his first albums up and through the 80s. And then the third one will be somewhat controversial. I'll be tackling his albums, his 3 or 4 songs that touch on the issues of the Yugoslavian state, Tito, its leader, and perhaps even the question of Yugoslavian nationalism and state values. So stay tuned for that third one. I imagine that the comment section will be quite interesting. So here's the deal. I got into this and I started listening and I had to do some research. I wanted to say, for Christmas, my wife got me this book by Petar Janjatović.
Good job.
Thank you. Which is the Encyclopedia of ex-U rock and roll. And I want to say, 90% of the views of my Balašević videos are from the former Yugoslavia, okay? So 90% of it are people, congratulations, who are watching this video who don't speak English as a native language. But 10% of you are Americans or are not from ex-Yugoslavia. This video really is for you. It's not for the people who know and already love Balašević, although I'm happy you're here. It really is trying to show what it is that makes this person so important. My favorite comments that I got on all the videos are people who say, thank you for explaining this to me. My husband, my wife is Croatian, is Slovenian, is Serbian, and I didn't understand why he was so sad that Balašević died. Or, I showed this video to my wife and now she understands it. So I am making this video for them. And if you're one of those people, if you are married to someone from former Yugoslavia who loves music, you should get this book for them for Christmas or for a birthday. You can get it on Amazon. I don't know this guy. Apparently he's a famous guy. I'm not getting paid to do this. But this is a very useful book. And hopefully you have a translator like I have over here. What's interesting is in these comments, speaking of translation, I got, most of the time, the comments were very friendly and very nice and amazingly, overwhelmingly kind and friendly. But often people would just say, like, you can't understand it. You're trying hard, but you can't possibly understand it. One, if you are not from former Yugoslavia, you can't understand it through your experience. And 2, the poetry is too strong and you can't possibly understand it in translation. Do you know what I say to that? Okay, I accept it. I accept that I will never truly understand Balašević in the same way that my wife does, and I won't understand the words in the same way that my wife does. And you, dear viewer, if you are an American or a non-Yugoslavian watching this, you will never fully get it either. But I'm not interested in success. I'm interested in the process of trying to succeed. It's in trying to understand Balašević, and by extension, trying to understand any other culture in any profound way on that other culture's terms, not on my terms. When I hear a Balašević song for the first time, I don't like it. I have never liked a single Balašević song the first time I heard it. I go, ugh, and then eventually I come to like it. It's appreciating the culture on its own terms. So please, come with me, continue with me on this journey to the prehistory of Balašević before he was a solo artist. According to the ex-U Rock Encyclopedia, he dropped out of high school as a junior, then got like a GED and went to a college of geography. He wanted to be a soccer star, but apparently he was never very good. The legend goes that he saw a fly in his room and he wrote a song about the fly in his boredom. And that's what gave him the idea to be a songwriter. Fun fact, there's a song by Hank Williams, the great American country star, called Fly Trouble. I think you could make an interesting comparison between Hank Williams and Balašević, which maybe I will do one of these years. So he would like hang around and he would write songs, and he was like translating songs for some TV show. He'd translate them into Serbo-Croatian until eventually he joined a band. This great monolithic figure of culture and importance that I've been talking about for hours now on this channel started off as someone who just joined a band, an already existing band, Žveta. Žetva, which means harvest. Žetva, which is kind of an acoustic-y pop band that he joined. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the first ever released piece of music by George Balašević, this. U razdeljak te ljubim. From razdeljak te ljubim. From 1977, the year of my birth. So here he is in this band. There's many other people singing on this song. Doesn't appear to be, it's not as though this is the Balašević story yet. He really seems to be just someone who's writing a song for this group. So let's kind of get started. I'm going to play you a little bit of this song, which, as you will see, was improbably, hugely successful. His first ever single sold 180,000 copies, which is a lot for a very small country. I'm going to play it for you, and you're going to say, why is this a tango? I don't have an answer. I don't know why it's a tango, but it's a tango. That's how he started. Sorry, my dog is about to knock over the camera stand. Okay, Bo, go, out. Kucha. Kucha?
Kucha.
Kucha. That's how you say dog in Serbian, Serbo-Croatian. So this early work, we have this tango song, which is hugely successful. And I'm listening to it, and it actually reminds me a little bit of a French singer, Boris Vian, who also wrote a tango in the 60s called The Happy Butchers, that was all about the relationship between a butcher and the military. I don't know if this is a coincidence or not, but I feel a lot of influence from French writers into Balašević's music. I wonder if there's anybody who knows about that. Please put it in the comments if you do. But we have here a trademark of the early Balašević sound, which is him and some woman. So it's just some woman sings for half the time. She seems to be making like borderline orgasmic sounds. Ljubim, ljubim. And these horns. And this is why you need a good translator. You need a Serbo-Croatian, Montenegrin, whatever in the house. Because if you look up the translation for this song, this is what it says. I am kissing you in the hair part. The hair part. That's it. The world's greatest singer, and his first song is about kissing someone on the hair part. Don't worry, that's not what the song is about. The song is about some guy, von Liegestuhl, some German who shows up at a party, and a woman like corners him and tells him that she loves him and wants to kiss him on the hair part. He runs away, but he's so haunted by this event that he falls into alcoholism. Now, if you are an American or a non-Yugoslavian like me, you might be wondering, what is this about? It's about oral sex. The world's most important singer, Mr. Amazing, the greatest triumph of all humanity, and his first hit is about performing oral sex on a woman. Okay, how do I know this? A couple reasons. First of all, Gospodine Janjatović says so in his book. So it's not just me saying it, and it's not just my wife saying it, okay? It was done in such a way where he has the woman singing the suggestive line, I want to kiss you on the crack, essentially, okay? So the woman sings the line so that it doesn't come across as being actually pornographic. But in the song, the woman is singing the line that the man is saying. Or is it the other way around?
Balašević himself is singing the woman's line, even though there is a female singer in the band who is singing narrator parts.
Yes, thank you. It's very confusing. Balašević is quite confusing. So, there's a woman and a man who sing throughout the whole song, Balašević sings the woman's lines. So he's saying, I want to kiss you on the crack. I want to just kiss and just lose myself. And I'm losing my mind kissing your crack. And in the background, a woman's voice is going, woo, ljubim. It's very clear what it's about. But it's only clear that it's about oral sex if you know it's about oral sex. It's in that way that it's very subtle and very funny and very vulgar and very comedic. So much of what we will find later in Balašević's work, this humorous, funny, and again, the relationship between humanism and vulgarity is very strong. We see it dating back to France, to the works of François Rabelais, where humanism is very connected to eroticism, is connected to humor, and that is what we are seeing in this song. It was too smart to be censored, and kind of too erotic to be seen as pornographic. I don't quite know. But that's how we start. That's the beginning of this whole story. The whole Balašević story is a joke about oral sex. Now, if we flip this over on the B-side to this tells us a lot about the story of Balašević in the early days. It's called, not many vowels in that word, Srce mi je kat ratar. We don't even care. We don't care about the song. I'm not even going to pronounce it correctly because this is the sad fate of Žetva, which is Balašević left the group. They became too poppy, too orchestrated, too polished. He left the group and he's not even on this song. So you can just skip it, okay? We're going through the singles of Balašević before his first album. This is done. We got the first side. We don't need to go to the second one. So, at this point, he leaves the band. He leaves the band and takes with him Verica Todorović. Right? He leaves with her, who becomes his sort of partner in Rani Mraz until she's replaced at some point by another female singer. Okay? And he even names his band kind of a reference to Žetva. He tells a story. He invented a proverb. Okay? If you are hoping for a good harvest, beware the early frost. Kind of an agricultural theme, kind of an interesting idea. He attributed this to a Siberian folk saying, which, by the way, if you are from Serbia and you come to America, 9 out of 10 people will think you are from Siberia. I hate to tell you, but it's just true. Half the time that my wife meets somebody and she says, I'm from Serbia, they go, oh, is it really cold there? Are there a lot of tigers? And she has to explain that it's a different place. So the joke here is that Žetva, if you're hoping for a good harvest, a good Žetva, beware the early frost, Rana Mraz, which is the name of this band. And this is the band that will lead up until the first album that I already reviewed, in Pub. And now we are starting to get a lot closer to the more mature, real songwriting of Balašević. In particular, with their first single, which is seen here. There's the band. There's our man, George Balašević, in his usual affable-looking face. And the song, Moja, Prva, Ljubav, my first love. And this very much feels like any song that might have been on Pub or anything else that I've heard. If my wife told me that this came out in 1987, I would believe it as opposed to 78. It's a great example of the way that he's able to write about love. And while I've been listening to these songs with my wife, she's really emphasized to me that he writes about love in such a great way because it's a sort of innocence and it's never dark. There's all different kinds of love in Balašević's music, but it's never dark, it's never negative, it's never hateful, it's never misogynistic, it's never overly lustful or angry or vindictive. It's all a kind of sweet, understandable human love. Now the song itself is kind of guitar and kind of simple, kind of light folky, some pretty aggressive synthesizer work going in and out here. I'll play you a little bit of the song just so you have an idea of what it sounds like. My First Love. Very kind of folky here. And you hear that kind of aggressive keyboards coming in here. And this is the kind of song where I put it on, and the second that I put it on, my wife sings every single word. I could hit stop, and she would still be singing, and I stopped the song 3 minutes ago. Every word, everybody knows. It's a very well-known song. And what's cool is this song is about, that wasn't a very good impersonation of your voice. I'm sorry. She doesn't sing like that. She sings quite well. He has this sort of like, the whole song is about his crush as a boy. He has a crush on a girl, and the girl becomes a teenager. She becomes more mature than he is. This is a human thing that happens all over the world, right? Girls mature faster than boys, and girls stay more mature than boys in some cases. But this happens here where he is realizing that she is growing up and going past him. It's just a simple, young love story. And at no point is he angry. It passes from like passing comic books back and forth till eventually she's putting on makeup. And the help from Verica Todorovic is amazing on here because her voice is just so beautiful. I think, based on what I've read, there isn't that much appreciation for the people who sing with Balašević, at least not that I've read, but I think it really adds a lot because his voice, especially early on, it's a little bit thinner than I associate it with later. And it just really balances his voice really nice. And it's a beautiful duet. It really is, especially with this kind of love song between men and women. Eventually she has a baby and gets married to an engineer in the song. The synthesizers get, kind of louder and goofier. And he just stays childish, writing songs and counting stars. It feels very much like in this sort of wheelhouse in the way that Balašević, just in the 2 albums I've reviewed, loves to talk about childhood and the innocence of childhood and the loss of innocence, but the loss of innocence never feels tragic. It feels like a funny loss of innocence. If anyone could write the best possible music about losing your innocence and just being like, yep, there goes my innocence, that is sort of where Balašević is coming for in this song. The B-side to this song, if you thought the A-side was goofy, oh man, Kristifore Sine. This song starts off with a whistle, like really goofy keyboards. It reminds me the most musically of the theme song to the TV show Gilligan's Island. It sounds like a sitcom theme song. It's sung basically entirely by the woman. There's a guitar and almost joking keyboard. I'm going to play it for you. You can't believe it. You can't believe what a serious and important artist would release such a sincerely goofy song. Ludi song, right? Doesn't that mean silly?
Oh, luda pesma.
Luda pesma, okay. It just keeps on going like that, in that kind of bizarre realm. But it's funny because I was playing it and my wife was so happy to be forced to revisit this. And if you are one of these people who is from former Yugoslavia and already loves Balašević, please listen to these songs again. Even the ones that you kind of dismiss as being his minor works are really beautiful. I mean, the way that the voices are produced here, this voice harmonizes with itself. The synthesizer like comes tagging on at the end. There's these weird bongos, and just it's so much fun to even study the minor works of somebody so important. And what's the song about? Christopher Columbus? Yeah, it's about Christopher Columbus finding America by mistake. And oh, what a stupid guy you are for discovering America. One thing I don't like is someone from another culture telling me all about America. I'm kidding. It's a joke. So it's just kind of this funny, goofy song about that. But there's a language lesson here. So if you are bilingual, which you probably are if you're watching this in Serbo-Croatian and in English, we spent probably, a half an hour? A half an hour trying to translate this song. Crni Sine. Literally translated, it means black sun, like a child. But it has the same meaning as like darn, Crni in this case, like darn, dang, bloody in English. In French is the best possible translation, sacré, like damn kid. So it's basically like Kristifore, damn kid. Kristifore, little punk. Kristifore, you little scamp. Kristifore, sacré fiston in French, I would say. We spend so much time trying to figure out how to say this, and we can never really quite find the proper usage of it. If you think you know, please put that in the comments. I want to get this right, but I don't quite know how to do it. A very funny, goofy song that has so much in it. And this actually reminds me a little bit of a different French song, Sacré Charlemagne, partly because it uses that same term, but that's a joke about Charlemagne having invented school and being mad at him. So I don't know if there's a crossover here. If Balašević listened to a lot of popular songs from France in the 60s, I imagined he might have. Maybe that's where he got the idea. I don't know. The next song, I'm gonna have a sip of water for this next song because this one is a doozy. This next song, I'm gonna put up the. See, I made these little things because I didn't want to buy the singles because that would have been too expensive. It's called Ljubio sam Snasu na Salasu, which means I kissed a girl on the ranch, basically. If you want to know what an amazing and fascinating artist Balašević is, this is your piece of evidence right here. This bizarre artifact of Serbo-Croatian Yugoslavian culture. Okay, this was a big hit, a big, successful commercial hit. It is a 14-minute song with 2 chords for almost the entire time, and then a very small bit that's sung. But for the most part, it is a story that is told. It's just talking and talking. And listen, my first take was, he's probably saying something pretty important here. I listened to the song, didn't look up the lyrics. I bet this is a really important song. But what we're starting to see here is the full scope of Balašević's art. We can have the ridiculousness of the song about oral sex. We can have the kind of interesting and moving song sort of about first love and about childhood innocence. We can have a totally goofy song about Christopher Columbus. And then we have this song, which shows his ability to be a storyteller, his ability to sort of encapsulate older modes of talking. Because throughout this entire song, he's taking on a very strong accent from Vojvodina. I've discussed a lot on this channel when I'm talking about Balašević, the way that he is both universal and regional at the same time. He is very much a person of the Vojvodina region, of the country now known as Serbia, at the time Yugoslavia. He very much encapsulates that culture, and he sort of represents that culture so much while also still being a general figure of humanity. And part of this whole thing is he's just like an old man. He's in his 20s, I guess, when he recorded this. But he sounds like an old man telling you a story that never ends. It's just, he starts off, and I don't know how he makes it so engaging, but apparently he does. He just starts off, and he starts talking about how do tambourines lose their... My wife was trying to explain, how do tambourines lose their skins? And then he starts telling a story about going to a town called Ijos. Ijos. Where his father...
That's a good soft sh for the Vojvodina accent.
Is it? Oh, good, yes. I was practicing my Vojvodina accent. So he tells this whole story, and I think this is intentionally very profound and also very stupid. I think it's supposed to be both at the same time, which is something that great artists can do. They can be profound and silly at the same time. So he goes off, go buy a horse. And he goes into all this detail about what kind of horse he's going to buy. He comes up with this aphorism, which apparently is an aphorism used in former Yugoslavia. Shortcuts are short, but the long way is closer. Meaning that, like shortcuts actually usually end up costing you more time than they save. And it even starts talking about summertime and the living is easy. He takes the English song and sings it in English, but with a strong Vojvodina accent. He gets totally lost until he finds the Salaš, this ranch. So he's this poor kid, right, from a small family, and he sees this ranch. And it's like an oasis in the desert. And it's this whole land of bounty and plenty. And this is where I want to spend a long time talking about cured meats. Why am I studying your culture again? Cured meats. I got to spend so much time about cured meats. Because this is the thing. There's a detail in this song which I think says so much about the importance of this music and why it is so valuable to study any culture at this level of depth, especially if it is a culture unknown to you. My wife hears one word from this song, okay? She hears one word from this song, shunke. Hearing the word shunke immediately, in almost a Proustian transformation, transports her to a little village where her grandfather is from. My grandfather-in-law, okay? She is transported immediately to this place because her grandfather had one of these little like cabins where you would cure meat, shunke. It's like a word for like a ham leg, like a dried and cured ham leg. So in this song, Balašević's character finds one of these rooms, and he's so hungry, and he's presumably so poor and so impoverished, and he sees this bounty in this.
It's actually a joke, because it's part of the sort of Vojvodina culture that you're like not a very sort of resilient person. You can't really go without sustenance for too long.
Okay.
So he was just lost for a whole hour and
Okay.
he's starving so much that he's hallucinating this ranch.
Okay, so it might even be that, right, so he's not actually starving, but he feels like he's starving and he feels like he needs to eat. So let me tell you why this shunke word is the most important word. This is the word of the day. You are going to learn, so if you are not from this part of the world, you are going to learn so much.
So if they're learning that word, they should know that it's shunka is the nominative version.
Okay.
That's in front of
Shunka.
shunke.
Okay. Shunka is the word. Thank you. She's my language teacher. I did get a lot of offers, by the way, to teach me Serbo-Croatian, which I may take you up on eventually. Thank you so much. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story about my grandfather-in-law, okay? He moved to an area just like this area that is discussed in the song, okay? He was born in 1931 in Bosnia, in the country that we now know as Bosnia. He saw his father slaughtered in front of him with his neck cut by people known as Chetniks, okay? This was near Banja Luka in Bosnia. My grandfather-in-law saw my great-grandfather-in-law murdered in front of him because he was an atheist and he was not monarchist enough. Okay, first of all, that's a pretty sad way to start a funny story about cured meat, but when we're talking about the history of this region, this is an important kind of story. What happens after the war? After the war, there's all these farms in the Vojvodina region that used to have Germans living there. The Germans don't live there anymore. They're either exiled by force or exiled by choice. They leave. And the Yugoslavian government realizes we need more people to be farmers. So entire like villages or neighborhoods or huge quantities of people, Serbian Bosnians, okay? So Bosnian Serbs, people who are Serbian by ethnicity but live in Bosnia, are transplanted from Bosnia to Vojvodina. To this day, apparently some people still call them the colonizers, okay? So that's an example here. The example where my grandfather-in-law lived near the village of Kikinda in a place called Rusko Selo. Let's imagine that that's where Balašević is now. Let's imagine maybe Balašević is even there in the same place where my grandfather-in-law is. The thing is, when the Serb Bosnians came, they brought their culture, including their food culture, all parts of their old culture. And one part of that culture, which is mostly present in Vojvodina and is not present everywhere in former Yugoslavia, were cured meats. Shunka, cured and smoked in a particular way, where I can't tell the difference. I'm a stupid American. I like Big Macs, cheeseburgers, hot dogs. I don't know anything about good cured meats, except for what has been taught to me by learning French and by having a wonderful wife.
And what's in our freezer sent from my Serbian family.
Yes, and her family will send us chunks of frozen meat, and I will eat them, and they're very good. So this meat is so important to the song. So in the song, when he talks about finding shunka, everybody who hears it understands exactly where they are, who they are, what kind of place this is, what time it is, who these people are, the lived experience, the exile, the movement, the wars, the ethnicity, the culture, the food, all of it in shunka. And here I was thinking it was ham, the hind leg of a pig that is cured and cold smoked and aged, a kind of prosciutto. So he walks in to this building filled with shunka, much like my grandfather-in-law's shunka room. Can we have a shunka room here?
Sure.
Okay, we should put a shunka room in the basement. My kids are both vegetarians, so it wouldn't work out so great. What happened to the pig? So he goes in and he sees shunka and slalina. Slalina is like a kind of bacon. They have bacon there, but it's not like American bacon. It's actually much better, kind of like pancetta. Think of it more like that. And so this playfulness of the story goes out. And you want to see the beauty of Balašević. It's all in this song where he describes in the most ridiculous way the meat that he sees. He sees the shunka and he describes it. And he just goes into such detail. And it's silly and it's stupid and it's done for a laugh. But it's also, I believe, intentional. It's showing his longing for abundance. There's a theme in this of him looking for abundance, an abundance of love, an abundance of financial success, of ease, of luxury, and it's seen in the way that he lusts after this shunka. So he describes this meat in this kind of detail. Now, first of all,
Slanina.
it gets...
He describes slanina.
Right, he describes the bacon, the slanina, and it gets even more complicated because shunke can also mean the meat of a cut of meat.
And the meaty layer in slanina.
Right, so the meaty layer is called a shunke, and the fatty part is called the slanina. And one thing Americans don't know is that fat is awesome. If you are eating cured meat, don't cut off the fat and throw it away, which most Americans do, and which almost resulted in me getting kicked out of her apartment when we started dating. Because I had all this, I was like, oh, just get rid of this fat. And she jumped into the trash and ate it. And it was, I'm just kidding. She didn't jump into the trash. She would have. So he describes,
You're looking.
yes, he describes this meat. And I'm just going to read you the part, okay? Shunke slalina azanash koje slanine. One nako što ima red, slanine pa red šunke, pa red slanine, pa red šunke, pa tako jedno 5-6 puta. So he describes it and he says, you know the kind of bacon I'm talking about. You know the kind of ham I'm talking about. You know, the meat and the fat and the meat and the fat and all of that 5 or 6 more times. So he's describing like a piece of meat that couldn't possibly exist, but he's able to play with the words. Para chunke, para saline, para shunke, para saline. He's able to play with these words and just the ridiculousness of this whole story. He even manages to talk about schwarzi, which are the little cracklins, which I discussed in my previous video. And this whole story goes on, and you're like, what the hell is it? Where's the horse? Didn't he say he was going to buy a horse? This was a hit song. This sold hundreds of thousands of copies. This random story about shunke. Then he starts singing a beautiful a story about this woman who has chickens and cows, and it's beautiful with these chords. Very simple. Very simple songwriting. He even uses a Turkish word for father, which is babu, which comes from Bosnian, which comes from Turkish. So even another, just like shunka is an indicator of where these people come from, so is this word. There's a response in falsetto that he sings, and it turns out this maiden had a husband. And then at this point, the song gets weird. You thought it was weird before with the ham and the meat and the fat and the meat and the fat and the meat and the fat. Then it gets super weird. He runs off, and then he inherits all this land from his uncle. And this is important. I think part of the Vojvodina legacy is that it's a very good land for growing, for agriculturally. So much of his, I think that's part of the reason why he was Rani Miraz and Zveta, the fact that it's a real indicator of this place that is based on the agricultural strength of the region. So he's given this land, and his ability to use little silly details to communicate things here, where he talks about like it has 6 windows on the street, so you can tell how big it is. And he talks, you know, how he has all these chickens and pigs and cows, like the ones you see on chocolate wrappers. But no matter what, he always remembers this girl, and he thinks about her and what he lost, even though he's now a rich landowner. And do you know what I said to my wife when I was done with this? What happened to the horse? Why didn't you buy the horse? Apparently, this is a typical kind of thing you might experience in Vojvodina. An old man telling a story that just goes nowhere and you don't quite know what it is. I do think it's important. I do think it is a song about youthful longing. It's a song about lost love, which is one of his favorite themes, which we'll get into over and over again on this class. And interestingly, he redoes the song multiple times and he tells a different story. So that means I've got to eventually track down all the versions from the 80s and the 90s and see what else he's singing about. He's not just a singer. He's not just a songwriter. He is a storyteller, but almost like a griot, you know, like an African storyteller, like a folk storyteller who's able to like transmit the heritage of his people to a larger group, right? I don't know. Seriously, the more I learn about Balašević, the happier I am that I ended up having to learn so much about him because he's so interesting. There's no B-side on this thing because it's a 14-minute song about Šunke. And I'm sorry to say, he never gets the horse. So there's a spoiler alert. And most importantly, it was a hit. Now, one more song on this video. Do you want to take a guess how long this has been going?
I don't know.
40 minutes.
Oh my God.
40 minutes. I was going to do all of his singles, but there's just too much to say.
2 more songs.
2 more songs. That's 2. 2 more songs. And we're going to really hit the point of what I would consider to be the most mature Balašević. These 2 songs, I think you could play back to back, and it encapsulates most of so many themes of Balašević, and both stylistically and in terms of his lyrics. We're going to start off with the A-side, Opprosti Mi, Katrin. Initially, I wasn't a fan of this. I thought it was a little bit overly produced. The last couple songs that I heard were a little bit like less produced, and this one feels a little bit more like a kind of soft rock 70s song. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I listened to it 5 times, and the 3rd time I liked it, and then the 4th time I was psyched, and then the 5th time I actually stayed upstairs listening to the song before I came downstairs because my wife and my daughter were having a serious conversation and I wanted to finish the song. So this is just what ends up happening. I listen to it the first time and go, this is cheesy. And then by the 5th time, I'm just like, Opprosti Mi, Katrin. Okay, that's not how the song sounds. Let me play it for you a little bit. Let's see if you have the same reaction as I do if you've never heard the song. Apparently this is one of a very famous song of his. And again, I had to ask my wife not to keep singing because I could hear her just about, no singing on here. So this is a really interesting, musically it is actually quite nice, cool chorus of voices on there, very smooth bass playing, almost Spanish sounding. But really what it's about is what makes it most interesting. And this, I'm going to quote my wife from yesterday. Many different shades of love and none of them are dark. That's a pretty good way of describing it. The shades of love. This is a song, and actually I'm going to keep quoting my wife here. Love is not a question of black or white, true love or untrue love. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle, like something in there. And if you're trying to figure out what is that in the middle, there's actually not that many songs or songwriters who are dedicated to explaining that middle ground, things which don't quite fit into that realm of understanding. That's what this song is. It's a song about a vacation spot in what is now known as Croatia, Pula. We're going to come back to Pula in a second. And he's playing guitar, and some French woman comes up and hits on him, and they sleep together, and they hang out on the beach, and they go searching for snails. I don't know if that's like a...
Seashells.
Oh, seashells. Mm-hmm. I thought it was like an escargot joke.
No, he gives her a seashell.
Oh, he gives her a seashell. So it's this kind of nice thing, and you're thinking, oh, what a sweet little story about a romantic love. But then she writes him a letter saying, like, please come and visit me in Dijon. And he's like, no, I'm not going to. So the whole song, Opprosti Mi, Katrin, is like, please forgive me, right? Like, I mistreated you, but I'm not going to visit you. And why is he not going to visit her? Because she wouldn't be the same. Whoever she was on Pula, on the beach, that moment, she would not be in her real life in Dijon. This weird realization of what somebody really is versus what they are for a short period of time. What is love, lust, and memory, and reality versus the dream of somebody, the dream that you can realize with somebody for a short period of time that cannot sustain longer exposure. All of these things are in this one little silly song that I initially didn't like. I think we could compare it very favorably with the song Prva, Ljubav, you know, his first love song, because it's very similar. It's just this question of like this gray area of love where things change and we lose love and we remember them and we move on, but we're not scarred, but we don't forget at the same time. Really quite a beautiful song. The B-side of this apparently is one of his more famous songs, Zivot Yemore, Life is a Sea. Here's a funny thing. Look up all the different translations of this title. Life is a sea or life is the sea. If you ever want to tease a Serbo-Croatian, ask them to use an article. They don't have articles in Serbo-Croatian. My wife speaks basically perfect English, except whenever she talks about bodies of water, she rarely puts the article in front of it. So she'll be like, yes, I was walking by Danube. And I get to correct her, which I rarely get to do, walking by the Danube. In this case, just this title itself is ambiguous. Is life a sea or is life the sea? The ambiguity built in to the Serbo-Croatian meaning of this song cannot be translated. Sorry, English speakers, you suck. There's nothing for you. There's no answer here. Is it the sea? Is it a sea? No. Life is ocean. That's probably the best translation. Beautiful guitar work on here. I wonder if this is the guitarist who will work with him later. Bošek, I believe. Great piano and guitar here. Musically, this is the Josip Bošek. The most interesting, I think musically, it has a really nice, it doesn't sound as dated as the rest of the music. The female vocalist is used very nicely here, very 70s synthesizer as well. A beautiful solo on that piano. I'll play a little bit of this kind of nice, mournful song, which is, you know, kind of one of these songs that people sing in concert and they know every single word. Do you want to sing? No. So we hear the female voice in the back used very well. I have to say, I miss the female voice with him. I think it actually sounds really nice having the female voice there. But it's a whole song all about life being a sea and being dragged down into the bottom, but still persisting and still living. One thing I would say, again, about Balašević, from what little I know of his music at this point, but he likes to sing about existing despite difficulty. And perhaps that's why he speaks so much to a people who have lived through so much difficulty, is it's not so much like, I'm stronger, I will make it through. More just like, yes, that happened, I am still here, which is a much different experience. Oddly, and I wasn't planning on talking about this, when my mother had cancer, and it was pretty bad, it was stage 4 ovarian cancer, and she eventually got over it. But when she was going through it, people would walk up to her and say, you can do it! You just gotta tell cancer who's boss! You'll make it! You are stronger than this! And she would just sit there and nod her head, and then she would tell me how angry it made her. She's like, I'm not stronger than cancer, I'm not fighting. It's just happening, and I will get better or I won't. And then after she got over it, she wasn't sitting there talking about how, I beat it, take that, cancer. It's just something that happened, and it was hard, and it moved on. So this song, which could be seen as a little bit, I don't know, lachrymose, or a little bit too much of just like life is an ocean and I'm being dragged down. At the heart of it is this idea that I'm still here. And maybe the next woman will be the right woman, and maybe I'll be okay, and maybe I'll make it out. Apparently, something that makes this song interesting, according to my wife, is that one of his greatest inspirations is another Yugoslavian singer, but from the part of Yugoslavia now known as Croatia, Arsen Dedić, who is a Croatian singer that he looked up to. There is a version of them singing this song together. I can't find it. Neither can my wife. YouTube, help me. Put that in the comments. I need to find this version. I watched Dedić do his own version, and it's quite nice. And it goes back to this whole concept of this idea of Balašević representing all of Yugoslavia, not just this small part of Serbia where he is from. I'm going to tell you a story that came from one of my commenters. I'm not going to give their name in case they want to be anonymous, but from one of my commenters in my last video about Balašević, which I think tells a lot of interesting things about what we've had here. On my 18th birthday, I went to the DJ in my favorite club and asked him to play a song by Balašević. Any song. He was reluctant that he might agitate anybody and create an incident. It was 1992 in Pula, the same town from that previous song. Remember about the Katrina? The same song. So he's in Pula in 1992. This club mostly played rock music. It was in the middle of an old town with all of these Roman ruins all over the place. At this point, Pula had been spared from the destruction of the war, but it was filled with refugees living in hostels, soldiers who were training to go into the war, and veterans having a break from the war. Okay? The war within former Yugoslavia, a lot of it between belligerents from Serbia and belligerents from Croatia. And here they are in Pula, in Croatia. Please play this Balašević song. The DJ was a friend of mine, and I pressed hard. I wanted Balašević, and it was my birthday. So he agreed that he would play Zivot je more, the B-side to the song about love in Pula, right? It's not much of a song to play in a club. Zivot je more. That's fine. He says, I was a depressed sort of teen. He played it as the final song of the night. He played it and nothing happened. Nobody came up to smack his face. Nobody drew weapons. Nobody reacted in any way negative. So next weekend, he put on another song, and again, nothing happened. So there you go. A little oasis, a little ranch in the middle of the desperate, sad times. Another further proof of this human victory that is Balašević. Okay, next time I will get to talk about the Pannonian Sailor, which is my wife's favorite Balašević song, but she doesn't know it. And I'm really excited to get to more of this. I don't know when I'm going to get to do that. This channel isn't a channel about Yugoslavian music. It's about anything I want to review. It just happens to be. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happened over there. Anything you want to add? Any notes?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Well then, until next time, there's the camera.